Welcome to The Author Show, where we feature new authors and books, from fiction to self-help and everything in between. You'll find it all at theauthorshow.com. That's theauthorshow.com. And now let the show begin.
Hello and welcome back to the show. This is your host, Don McCauley. Today we're welcoming the program author, Dr. Scot Hodkiewicz, and he is the author of Getting to Heaven by Going Through Hell. Scott, how are you?
Real good, thank you.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, I'm a veterinarian here in Wisconsin, and my wife's also a veterinarian, and this is really our story of a true story of a really devastating car crash that we were in, really a trip into hell, and our journey out of that hell to find heaven on the other side.
So tell us about your book.
The book is a story about a devastating car crash we were in. We were kind of had this life planned out. We thought we knew how it was going to go. We were both veterinarians. We owned our own practice and were kind of living the dream. And as we were coming back from a weekend vacation, a drunk driver came across the interstate and hit us head on. So we had a 70-mile-an-hour head-on collision. We were both very, very injured. I broke all kinds of bones. Probably should have died about 4 times that day. I had broken feet. I broke my thigh bone that went out the side and took my femoral vein, and along with it should have bled to death there. Broken pelvis, 2 broken elbows, and dislocated shoulder, multiple internal injuries. My wife broke her back in 3 places, broke her elbow, major concussion, internal bleeding. We had 3 kids in the car with us. They were battered and beaten. I actually had 2 dogs in the car with us too. And really that started our trip into hell. The story is really about getting out of that hell and how we left that hell behind and were able to find heaven on the other side.
So who did you write your book for specifically?
Well, I think most people are going to go through some form of hell at some time. Maybe it's divorce or illness. Maybe it's an addiction. We all go through hell at some point in our lives. And really the book is designed to help people get out of their hell. I see that hell is our choice. We stay there or we leave, but it's our choice. I don't believe that what I've found going through this was that hell really doesn't have any walls. We either can stay or we can go. The walls around hell are the ones we put up. And this book was really about tearing down those walls and getting out of our hell and leaving it behind. When you get out of hell, I found my heaven was there too, and there's no walls around that. I found I can enter heaven if I choose.
Now, if you could compare your book with any book out there that we might be familiar with, which book would it be and why?
Probably the book most similar is the Elizabeth Smart story. Elizabeth Smart was a 14-year-old, some people may remember, was a 14-year-old girl that was stolen at knife point from her bedroom. She was held captive, starved, raped, sodomized daily. She spent 9 months in this hell. Her story is very similar to mine. It's about leaving the hell behind. And one thing that resonated with me with her story, when she was found and brought back to her family after spending these 9 months in hell, her mother told her something that resonated with me. She said, "These awful people stole 9 months of your life. Don't let them steal another day. You leave it behind and you go find happiness." My story is very similar to that. She found happiness through faith and forgiveness, and that's what I had to do to get out of my hell also. Now she's a successful contributor on Good Morning America. She's married, and one of the things she stated was that she's been alive for 300 months. 9 of those months were very bad. The rest were pretty good, and she'll take those odds any day.
Now, you said that you were in hell, but you had to choose whether or not you were going to stay there. How did you choose?
Well, that had to be revealed to me. I didn't know how to get out of hell. I'd never been there before, and up until that time, my life had been pretty easy. But slowly, and actually, my way out was revealed to me, believe it or not, by a Amish mother in Pennsylvania. You'll have to read the book to find that story. But as I found my way out of hell, I realized that I had to leave some things behind. I had a lot of anger, a lot of hate at the man who had done this to us. He had nearly killed our entire family. He was an 8-time drunk driver, and so I had a lot of hate and anger at him. But I found I had to leave those things behind. Those were the things that were keeping me in hell. Those were my walls, and I built them, so I needed to get rid of them. And when I left the anger and the hate, then I was able to leave my hell. Anger and hate are something that you can't bring into heaven, so I can't bring those along. So once I left those behind, I was able to leave my hell and enter my heaven.
What do you mean when you say forgiveness is selfish?
Well, for me, I couldn't even speak to the man who hit us. He was going on trial, so I had no ability to talk with him. He had no ability to apologize or communicate with me. So I had no reason to forgive him for his sake. I forgave him because that was how I got rid of the anger and the hate. Once I forgave him, then I could leave those things behind. So my forgiving him was not for his benefit, it was solely for mine. So that's when I say forgiveness is selfish. It's selfish in a good way, because in the end, it helped me. It helped me leave my anger and my hate. I don't know if he ever knew I forgave him, so I don't know if it helped him. He was facing 40 years in prison, so being angry with him really had no effect on how his life was going to go. But it did help me. So forgiveness ended up being a very selfish thing, but in a very good way.
Now, in the book, you talk about angels. What can you tell us about that?
Well, the definition of angels is they appear, they do God's work, and a lot of times they just disappear. Well, we had all kinds of angels, and I'm not talking about the ones with halos and the harps. I'm talking about the people who came into our lives, helped us when we needed it, and in a lot of cases disappeared. Those were the people who held on to my kids on the side of the road. They wrapped them in blankets while the firemen were trying to get myself and my wife out of the car. One of the angels was the doctor who put me back together. He wasn't supposed to be there that day. He was in doing some paperwork when we came in, and he stayed there for over 10 hours in surgery with me. We had all kinds of angels that showed up later. A lot of them were our clients. As veterinarians, you get to know a lot of people, and when they found out we were injured and needed help, they did what they could do in order to help us. We had one client who has a laundromat, and so he called up and said, Thursdays, put all your laundry out on your front porch. He sent an employee over to pick it up. Thursday night, it reappeared on our porch, folded, washed, pressed, and he did that every week until we told him that, no, we can do our laundry again. My wife had a broken back. She couldn't be doing laundry. She was in a full body brace. And so these were the angels that stepped up for us and appeared. And they did God's work. And in a lot of cases, they just kind of disappeared.
So what is your idea of heaven?
Well, what I found is that heaven is here. It's not something that is reserved for us after our death. Heaven's all around us. We just refuse to see it. And it took me going through my hell to start to see the heaven around us. For me, heaven is a lot of nature. I live on a 300-acre farm, and since going through my hell, part of that is taking care of the wildlife that's on the farm with us. So we put in food for them. We spend the summer making better habitat for them. I see that as part of my giving back, that I'm blessed to be here. I'm blessed to be on this farm, and I share it with a lot of God's creatures. And it's my responsibility, I see, to spend some time making things better for them also.
Now, you talk about your plan for life. What is that?
Well, we all think we have a great plan for how things were going to go. We did. We were going to get married, have our practice, raise our kids a certain way, and everything was going to work out like we planned it. What I realized that I really don't control very much. I couldn't control the drunk driver coming across and hitting us. That wasn't part of our plan. I had no control of that, and I just had to accept that God's got a bigger plan, and I'm just following it. I'm just kind of along for the ride. The one nice thing about that, and one thing I realized, was that takes away a lot of the worry, a lot of the anxiety, because I don't control much anyway, and I only worry about things I can control. Well, I don't control very much. I don't know when the next drunk driver is going to come across and hit me. I don't know if I'm going to develop cancer in a year. I don't control those things. But because I don't control them, I also don't have to worry about them. Yes, I plan for retirement. I put some money away, that kind of thing. But that's about all I can control. I can control how I treat people, because you never know when you're going to need that angel coming back into your life again. So it's nice to treat people well ahead of time. But that's about all I can control, and that's about all I can plan for.
How would you describe your writing style?
Well, the book is very much a true story. I don't hold anything back, and that includes all my failures. But part of the story is also humorous. As hard and as difficult as this journey was, there was a lot of funny things that happened also. I always say that God has a great sense of humor. An example of that was about 3 weeks after our crash, I wasn't able to eat for about 3 weeks. And as I was starting to recover, I finally one day got my appetite back. And so I ordered a big cheeseburger with a chocolate shake and fries. This was the one time in my life I could eat anything I wanted and not worry about the calories. I had lost about 35 pounds, and it was time to put weight back on. So I ordered my cheeseburger and milkshake. I took 2 bites of the cheeseburger and was stuffed full. My stomach had shrunk to such a point where that was all I could eat. I could almost hear God laughing up there, that this was the one time I could eat anything I want, and I could take 2 bites and be full.
So based on your experience as a writer, what's the one recommendation you would make to authors just starting out?
The main thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to keep the story moving. I wanted every chapter to have a purpose. I didn't want the reader ever to get bored. And so the story moves fairly quickly. I would suggest to authors to keep the story moving.
In your opinion, who should buy your book?
This book really resonates with people who have been through some kind of hell, had some kind of difficulty in their life. Maybe it's divorce, maybe it's addiction, maybe it's illness. But people who are going through that hell need to see that there's a purpose for it, that going through the hell makes you a stronger, better person. It's God's spiritual workout. And like any workout, it can be really tough, but we're looking for results at the end. And the results of that spiritual workout can be great.
Do you have a website?
I do. I do have a website. It's drscothodkiewicz.com. I also have a Facebook page, Dr. Scot Hodkiewicz, author.
Could you spell your name for us, please?
It's Scott with 1 T, so S-C-O-T, and Hodkiewicz is H-O-D-K-I-E-W-I-C-Z.
Well, this has been just great. Our guest today has been Dr. Scot Hodkiewicz, and he is the author of Getting to Heaven by Going Through Hell. Scott, thanks very much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Chapter 1, My Great Plan. I thought I had a great plan. I had always done well in school. I was valedictorian at my high school graduation and ranked second in my undergraduate class in college, although I never received my undergraduate degree. Because I'd been accepted into veterinary school, I left a year early to fulfill my dream of working in medicine. Why veterinary school? In spite of my academic accomplishments, I was shy as an adolescent, with a bit of an inferiority complex. Being a top-notch physician, taking on the responsibility of treating people seemed too much for me to handle. When you're lacking in confidence, putting another human being's life in your hands is way too risky, so instead I became a veterinarian. Of course, I still have to cope with a great deal of pressure as a vet, because my patients are often regarded as members of the family, yet it pales in comparison to what human physicians face every day. Even now, losing someone's beloved pet rattles me, but losing someone's child or spouse could haunt me forever. During my training, I discovered that my veterinary medicine fit my personality perfectly. I absolutely loved it. I enjoyed the challenge of medicine and the freedom that working with animals affords. Because I was in my element, I developed confidence, lost my shyness, and blossomed. This type of career just made sense to me. I had found my calling. 4 years later, I graduated at the top of my veterinary class. Job offers everywhere I applied. My great plan. Step 1, become a vet. Step 2, get a good job. Step 3, get married and start a family. Right out of vet school, I married Mona, a beautiful, intelligent woman from the veterinary class behind me. Since she had her pick of guys, I felt incredibly lucky to have won her over. Mona and I began working at a mixed animal practice where we treated dogs and cats as well as farm animals. Here, I perfected my craft and honed my skills by developing a specialty in surgery. I became especially adept at orthopedics, fixing broken bones. Soon after, we started our family. With the birth of our first child, Alexa, we took yet another step on my carefully laid-out plan. The last step? Open our own veterinary hospital. 5 years after graduation, Mona and I got our chance and moved to a beautiful area in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. Home to about 10,000 residents, this Midwestern town boasts a gorgeous lake and constant activity, in addition to safe neighborhoods and great schools, the perfect place for us to raise our family. We spent the next 8 years building a successful veterinary practice and expanding our family to include another daughter, Victoria, and a son, Chase. Life was good. I truly believe the hard part was over. The 60-hour work week spent building a new business and the constant reading and studying to sharpen my skills in surgery and medicine. All of this was winding down, and life was getting progressively easier. We'd survived the baby stages and the terrible twos, having changed countless diapers and dealt with constantly interrupted sleep courtesy of either crying kids or emergency calls. These experiences probably scarred me for life, since I rarely sleep through the night now and would often awake at 3 in the morning to complete some project I couldn't finish during the day. The rest of my plan was simple. We'd already put in the hard work building a practice and raising the kids so we could coast by the time they grew into teenagers. At that time, we'd hire more staff, work fewer hours, and play more. With our eyes on retirement at 60, we'd practice veterinary medicine for another 20 years and sell the business for a bunch of money. Thereafter, we would travel. Yes, sir, we had it all figured out. By sticking to our great plan, we were now in complete control of our lives as successful business owners, parents, and pet owners. Even our dogs listened well. Not only were we making good money, we were the toast of the town, regular invitees to the best parties and events hosted by the wealthiest people in Lake Geneva, most of whom were also our clients. Was it any wonder Mona and I were absolutely convinced we could handle anything life threw at us? We'd build it all ourselves, without any help from anyone else. I figured now I could sit down and write a self-help book about my great plan, in which I'd tell others how to build the perfect life. People would rush to read all about it. It would be a bestseller and elevate me to a whole new level of success, with Oprah and Dr. Phil calling to interview the young veterinarian who'd achieved it all by his late 30s. Yeah, great plan. Then came that fateful October. We were returning home to Lake Geneva from our cabin in northern Wisconsin following our get-ready-for-winter weekend. The boat needed to be winterized, and the local dealer up north had offered a special deal. Saturday-only winterization for $65. Since the winterization down where I lived often cost over $200, this was a bargain I couldn't resist. Boy, was I smart. Of course, the cabin required some maintenance, too. The gutters were full of pine needles, and a few windows were in desperate need of caulking. Soon snow would be piling up 2 feet high in the roof and in the driveway, on the roads, and everywhere else. Although there were also some dead trees around the property in need of cutting, I figured that task could wait until next time we were up. No rush, plenty of time. The weekend had been productive, but still fun. Our cabin had no TV, just the way we like it, so we'd spend most of our time outside fishing, or at least trying, since we've never had much luck on the lake, and hiking with our 2 dogs, a golden retriever named Annabelle and a little Yorkie poo named Olivia. We'd make pudgy pies, a family tradition of meat, spaghetti sauce, and cheese cooked in a sandwich iron over a fire. We'd talk and eat s'mores around the bonfire until either the weather or the mosquitoes chased us inside, where we would then play Clue and Battleship. Often the night ended with blackjack, which is a pretty easy game to understand for 3 little kids. In fact, at the last parent-teacher conference prior to this October weekend, Chase's teacher had commented on my son's remarkable addition abilities as a pre-K student. When I replied that Chase was really good at adding to 21, I got the bad parent look and a kick from Mona under the table. At the ripe old age of 4, he was already becoming quite a card shark. I loved fall in Wisconsin. Actually, I enjoy all 4 seasons here. Hot summers, cold winters, and beautiful springs, but fall is by far my favorite. Wisconsin is known for long, frigid winters, Packer games at Lambeau Field, and brats on the grill. When most people think of Wisconsin, they automatically start to shiver. To me, there's nothing better than being in a warm sweatshirt next to a hot fire with a book in hand when the leaves are changing colors. During that October weekend, the temperature had ranged from high 50s during the day to low 40s at night. This is the season when fishing picks up and we toss footballs in the driveway. The time of year when being at the cabin is all about campfires in the cool nights, countless twinkling stars, a crackling fireplace, and a thick warm comforter. The best part? No bugs. In Wisconsin, our state bird is the mosquito and our state mascot is the tick, but come October, both are thankfully gone and we can put away the bug spray until spring. By Sunday we completed our chores and playtime at the cabin. It was time to head home. To avoid traffic, we left early. There are typically a lot of cars heading back from northern Wisconsin on Sunday nights, so we got on the road around noon. Naturally, I timed the 3-hour trip so I could listen to the Packers game on the way, having been a die-hard fan since I was a kid. My dad was at the famous Ice Bowl of 1963, game time temperature of minus 13 degrees, when the Packers beat the Cowboys on a last-second quarterback sneak by Bart Starr. Of course, half of Wisconsin claims to have been there along with him. Because Mona does not share my enthusiasm for the green and gold, she sleeps when we drive so I can listen to the game. Our minivan was also equipped with a DVD for the kids who sat with their headphones on watching a Scooby-Doo cartoon. Mona and the dogs, exhausted from the activity of the previous 48 hours, drifted off to sleep. As per her habit, Mona doesn't even try to stay awake and is usually asleep within a mile or two of leaving, feet propped up on the dash and seat back as far as possible. This was every dad/husband's definition of peace and tranquility. Mom asleep, the kids watching a video, and a football game playing on the radio. It was definitely my idea of heaven. The leaves were changing and the temperature was a pleasant 55 degrees. The Packers were having a good season with a high probability of making the playoffs. All was right in my world. Yes, indeed, my plan had come together perfectly. What could possibly go wrong? Although an avid fan, I was not really listening to the game that day because I was too busy using the time to figure out ways to make the veterinary clinic more successful, i.e. more profitable. What if I learned to do a different surgery or added another piece of equipment? How much money would that bring in? Could I raise my prices or cut back on staff? The business was now booming and my focus had shifted. When I started, I wanted nothing to do with the business side. I just wanted to work on my patients. Now I'd set my sights on how much money I could make doing what Americans naturally do, pursue happiness through the accumulation of wealth. And why not? Our earnings were already paying for our cabin in the woods. What was wrong with wanting more? Truth be told, I was losing my way by chasing other people's definition of the American dream. Although I did have some misgivings about my relatively new and nearly exclusive focus on income versus the care and healing of animals, I'd usually brush them off. After all, I was making good money, running with the wealthy in town, enjoying the respect of the community, and buying anything I wanted. And still, I wanted even more. Oh yes, I had it all figured out. Life was perfect. We would miss church again this Sunday, but who cared? We hadn't really been going much anyway because we were just too busy living the dream. At some point we'd start to attend more regularly. Plenty of time for that. I don't remember the impact. I heard and felt nothing. The only thing I know is what witnesses have told me. The other car was a 2005 Jeep purchased from a dealer the day before by a drunk driver with a record of 7 DUIs and a suspended driver's license, and it's legal to sell a car to someone with no legal way to drive it in Wisconsin. Today would be his 8th offense. The driver, a man about my age named Mike Jacobs, not his real name, had spent the morning driving around with a case of Miller High Life in the car. He had stopped by his mother's house that morning already drunk, but had driven away. She had not even tried to stop him, and continued guzzling beer. He had already spent 7 years in prison, 3 after his 6th DUI, and 4 after his 7th. As soon as he'd get out, he'd start drinking all over again. Jacobs was out on parole the day of the accident, but like every other time prior to that, it mattered little to him. He violated the conditions of his parole numerous times since his last stint in prison. The pattern would go like this. His mother would call his parole officer to report he was drinking again, and the parole officer would stop by his house, see beer in the fridge and empty cans all over the place. A condition of parole was that no alcohol could be on the premises. Give him a warning and leave. Nothing had been done. Jacobs had been caught driving drunk a month earlier in a hotel parking lot and once again let off with only a warning. In Wisconsin, DUI can only be charged if you're on a public road. On that particular day, he had been in violation of his parole since he wasn't supposed to drink in the first place. He was forbidden to be in possession of car keys, much less drive a car, after consuming alcohol. Although Jacobs could have been sent back to serve more prison time, instead he was given another meaningless warning. These warnings and threats of punishment carried no weight, and he knew it. By 1 o'clock on this particular Sunday afternoon, he was over halfway through another case of beer. Our decision to leave early that day to avoid the worst traffic put us directly in his path. He was going to change everything I knew, everything that was so right in my perfect world and my perfect plan. Good thing I hadn't written my self-help book yet.
This is Don McCauley wrapping up another edition of The Author Show. Please share this interview with your family and your friends so that they too may have the opportunity to discover our guest and his work. And why not spread the word on social media? We look forward to you joining us next time for another great book and another great author on The Author Show.
Thanks for listening to The Author Show. Find out more about authors and their work at theauthorshow.com. Theauthorshow.com. Tune in next time to another great author on The Author Show.